Hello and welcome to Salford Now. I'm Jolie Billington.
And I'm James Young. Here's what's coming up on the programme today. The cost of living crisis has contributed to rent rises, and we find out how that has affected students.
Last year our accommodation was £90 a week. This year it went up to £97 a week, and then next year it's going up to £120 a week.
Robert Martin discusses the impact of the cost of living crisis on his studies as a university student.
And we speak to Sir Graham Brady MP about Altrincham Town Hall being potentially leased to private owners.
With many people suffering with the cost of living crisis, students are facing the brunt of it due to rent increases, leaving some students struggling to pay bills. Phoebe McHugh has more.
Housing for students is becoming a worrying issue, with many students unsure as to how they will afford to pay rent with price increases already announced for the next academic year. I sat down with Cameron Muirhead, a third-year student living in student accommodation, as he highlighted the price difference from 3 years of living away from home at university. Students are having to find alternative living arrangements for the next academic year, with living conditions not to the standard which were promised, despite the price increases.
Currently I'm paying £7,800, which is so much more than I was paying the 2 previous years. It's leaving me with £400 each semester, which I feel just isn't enough.
Prices of student accommodation are increasing even more, with some costing up to £9,000 per year. This is causing concern as the maximum student loan may not cover the cost, leaving people with next to nothing to afford essential necessities.
I've got problems like mice living here, and I know it's not just my problems. It's a very common occurrence, and the responses are just not quick enough for the rent I'm paying. I genuinely wouldn't know what to do with myself if I had to pay £9 grand a year, because that would leave me with genuinely £0 to pay for shopping or anything like that. It's going to be such a struggle with just trying to get onto the property ladder with how much money housing is at the moment, like having to buy a mortgage, and I'm having to start from square one with finding a job, because being at uni I want to find a job that's worth my degree.
Jack is another student who is also impacted by rent rises as a result of the cost of living crisis. He has had to make sacrifices to his daily life in order to afford being a student living in Salford.
Yeah, I think the student price of cost of living is just a bit ridiculous at the moment, seeing that last year our accommodation was £90 a week. This year it went up to £97 a week, and then next year it's going up to £120 a week. So yeah, it's harder to live with, to be honest, because you got to think about your food as well to come out of that. So yeah, it's just a lot harder on us.
Andy Burnham and other leaders of Greater Manchester have announced the Good Landlord scheme. The scheme aims to deliver a commitment to provide safe, decent and affordable housing for all, recognising that housing is a fundamental part to the health and well-being of individuals. Manchester City Council recently unveiled an £8 million package of support as so many people have fallen victim to the cost of living crisis and rent rises. The scheme aims to be introduced by the end of 2023. Phoebe McHugh, Keys News.
Joining me now in the studio is Robert Martin, a student who has faced the impacts of the cost of living crisis firsthand. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
So how has the cost of living affected your university experience?
It affected in a lot of ways, but mostly it was stability. So I was struggling to eat and pay my bills because I had to prioritise my time for uni rather than working full time, and part time wage just wasn't really covering everything that I needed to survive, really.
Yeah, so what is your current living situation like?
I live in a house share now that when I dropped out of uni I'm still paying for, but the rent's going up for that place, so we're going to have to look for somewhere else afterwards. So it's just a bit stressful, really.
So how much is the rent going up by?
I think it's like a tenner a week.
A tenner a week?
Something like that, yeah, something crazy. It's just too much though. The rent's already expensive enough.
So does your loan cover your rent expenses?
It doesn't, no.
It doesn't?
No.
Right. So has the cost of living crisis affected your decision to leave university?
Yeah, it was the main reason I think that I decided to leave, because it's not like I didn't want to leave uni, but I feel like I had to, just because I couldn't keep studying full time and then trying to make ends meet with a part-time job. It just wasn't feasible for me, so I've had to sort of sacrifice university to survive, really.
Yeah.
Despite being over 100 years old and being a key part of the community, Altrincham Town Hall is at risk of being leased out to private owners. I have more. This is Altrincham Town Hall, a Grade 2 listed building that is over 100 years old and serves as a key part of the community. But Trafford Council have announced that they want to lease the building off to a private owner for 25 years and, despite opposition, are going ahead with the plans.
The real problem is that the council has shown it to be ambivalent about history and heritage, but it is willing to sacrifice these on the altar of the money god. That's what comes across. The public do not agree with you.
Needs to be used, yes. Certainly not knocked down. Yeah, it's a beautiful building. I'm all in favour because I love old buildings. Like me, they're old and hopefully well kept.
Altrincham Town Hall, it's an important part of our local history and heritage, and it's well used by the community. It's used a lot for weddings and other celebrations, but also for community groups to hold their meetings, whether it's the Civic Society or Altrincham Court Leet. I've attended hustings in there at general election times as well. So in a town which is very heavily populated, but has very few community assets of that sort. There just aren't many places where the community can come together and have meetings, have celebrations, hold events. And I think it would be a real tragedy if the council was prepared to allow it to go.
Behind me is Stretford Town Hall. This is an example of how community assets can be repurposed into something that's crucial for people that need food banks, fuel vouchers and needs a place to enjoy, for things like David Bowie film nights, tea parties, loads of things for all ages to enjoy. We caught up with the people behind here to understand how a venue like this can be reused and serve an important part of the community.
We've got office space, so we provide workspace in the town centre. We run our own events, so we run things like community cinema, live music nights, just sort of like big community events, things like Jubilee Street Party we did last year, that sort of stuff. And then we also hire out all of the rooms, so it's an important venue for the local community to use, as well as us putting on our own activities. Despite Stretford showing an example of how a town hall can be repurposed, and despite Altrincham growing massively in the past few years with a new market and booming high street, the town hall doesn't look like one thing it wants to save. James Young, Keys News.
A new exhibition will be opened in the Imperial War Museum North. Over 60 portraits of Holocaust survivors and their families will be shown for members of the public to come and reflect. The free exhibition opens tomorrow and will run until summer 2023.
Joining us now is Kate Snoddy, who has the latest on all things sports.
Salford University's men's football only had 2 games this week after their second team had to rearrange due to injuries. The first played Edge Hill but lost 3-1 as they struggled to move up the table. The thirds took on Bolton University and won 4-0. Controversy struck amongst the Salford football teams this week as the seconds beat the first 3-1 in training. On the other hand, the women's first team won 3-1 yesterday against Liverpool Hope, as well as their seconds winning 3-1 against Manchester Laces on Sunday. Salford Uni's netball first also won their game yesterday 4-2, 42-26. Hopefully their success will continue tonight as they're holding their annual charity event to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Trust. Other sports teams and university students will have entered into the teams to compete in a mini tournament. Players will donate £2 each. Everybody's welcome to play or support. Salford City are hoping for another victory against Colchester United after their last encounter in 2021, where they won 2-0. They are in high hopes of reaching the playoffs. Salford's midfielder Ethan Gilbraith said, "I think the playoffs are massively realistic for us." However, they were slightly disappointed with their 1-1 draw on Tuesday. Manchester United were victorious last night with a 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest in the first leg of the EFL Cup semi-final. Taking it to the next level, Manchester United's women started the week off with a 1-0 win against Reading on Sunday, taking them to the top of the Women's Super League, making them contenders for the league title, which will be their first ever in the WSL.
That's it for Keys News this week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.